Hi guys, welcome back to the RebelEngineer YouTube channel. In one of my previous videos, I talk about why work-life balance is important. And in today's video, I would like to talk about the solution. How to spot a job with bad work-life balance during the interview process. I'll be mentioning software engineering in this video, but I would say that these tips and advices apply to other professions as well, whether you are in the tech industry or not. First, let's recap why work-life balance is important. No matter how desperate you are for a job, whether you have been laid off or not, work-life balance makes sure you can perform on your job in the long run and have a fulfilling career. A job with good work-life balance won't destroy your physical and mental health for the sake of completing some fake deadlines to help your manager or skip manager gets promoted faster and earlier. A good work-life balance ensures you can perform at higher level even when your health is in decline. As you age and your family responsibilities go up with pets, spouse, children, etc. Good work-life balance also helps you to do side gigs and side hustles that really helps you break free from corporate slavery. Jobs with good work-life balance mostly would have a per-hour pay rate higher than jobs with bad work-life balance, especially in the tech industry. Okay, so there are two misconceptions about good work-life balance that I would like to clarify in this video. The first misconception people usually have is on-site or hybrid roles have worse work-life balance than remote roles. Okay, so don't discount hybrid or on-site companies altogether when you apply for jobs because remote or on-site or hybrid do not say anything about work-life balance. There are on-site or hybrid companies that are actually very chilled. And there are fully remote companies that use remote as a way to keep the employees always working at home. And thus, you have to be careful here. There are things you can figure out and questions you can ask to make sure that the companies actually have good work-life balance. We will touch on this point later in this video. The way or the location they choose to do work have little to do with work-life balance, even flexibility in many cases. Remote work companies have been getting more and more creative to control their employees remotely. From monitoring the mouse clicks on the computer to actively monitoring the screen of the employees, to monitoring chat frequencies on companies' chat threads or forums, to restricting PTOs and the places you work due to tax and legal reasons. There are many ways that remote companies can impose restrictions on the way you work. So we will go over all these details in these videos. The second misconception people usually have is unlimited PTO truly means unlimited. Unlimited PTO or unlimited paid time off, in my opinion, is a total scam. I'll say that you should avoid companies with unlimited PTO altogether if you can. You should choose companies with actual time off balance or companies with unlimited PTO but fully remote. You should ask the HR person whether you can work remotely from another country and for how long. This is the best way to identify whether unlimited PTO is really unlimited PTO. A company that I interviewed with earlier actually said that I had to take PTO if I plan to be in any other country for more than 2 weeks for tax purposes. And this is a total lie. I'm a foreign worker myself. They're just trying to control me. I mean, I knew the tax laws and regulations in my own country as well as, in the United States. And when they said this was for tax purposes, I know that it was total lie. Again, I would like to stress this again in this video that companies look after themselves and not after the employees. They look after themselves, they don't look after you. So most unlimited PTO or paid time off means that you have to get approvals from your managers for every single break that's longer than 2 weeks. So that's usually the case with unlimited PTO. Okay, so with these two misconceptions out of the way, I would like to talk about the traits of a job that has bad work-life balance, especially for software engineering, and what you can do to figure this out in the interview processes without burning bridges or ruining your chances of landing the job. The first advice I'd like to talk about is avoid companies with unlimited PTO, as I said above. You should choose the companies with actual time off balance, usually 20 business days a year or 30 days a year. That's usually the case. To figure out whether a company has unlimited PTO policy or not, you can research online and schedule a call with HR to go over it. Remember, you need to schedule a call and not a text or email, so HR won't be able to store this information. So my second advice for you is to avoid companies where typical employees take very little time off or vacations. And this is regardless of whether the companies have fixed or unlimited PTO. Because even if you have fixed or unlimited PTO and the employees don't dare to take time off, it may signal a very toxic and bad working culture. To figure out whether the company's employees take their time offs or not, You can ask some questions during the interview. You should ask each candidate if you would like and remember their answers or take notes if possible. The first thing you should ask is what is their typical days like. You should also ask the interviewers where did they go last year for vacations and for how long. There will always be little hints in their answers about bad work-life balance, no matter how they try to fake it or sugarcoat it or lie about it. For example, if they say the typical day is constantly long-hour work days, working late into the evening or even during weekends, it suggests an imbalance between work and personal life. Also, if they say something about high stress levels, right? So like responses indicating a chaotic or stressful day without adequate breaks or time for personal activities, it can also indicate an unhealthy work-life balance. If they say something about lack of flexibility, for example, if the interviewer mentions rigid schedules without much flexibility to manage personal commitments, it may indicate an imbalance favoring work over personal life. And if the interviewer talks about, the inability to disconnect, for example, if the interviewer talks about being constantly tethered to work, checking emails or messages even during off hours, it suggests a lack of boundaries between work and personal life. Now, next to the vacation questions, when you ask them if they have taken vacations recently, and if the interviewers have not taken any vacation or mention not having had a proper break in a significant period of time, it suggests a lack of prioritization of personal time off. If the interviewer says that they have short or interrupted vacations, that also indicate vacations cut short due to work demands or an inability to fully unwind during time off. These are the red flags for a poor work-life balance. Also, if the interviewer signals anything about difficulty remembering their last vacation, right? If they cannot recall their last vacation for a very long time, it could indicate a lack of emphasis on personal time or difficulties in achieving a healthy work-life balance. Also, if they show negative emotions when you ask the questions, like guilt or negativity associated with taking breaks, it might suggest a workplace culture that discourages or penalizes time off. Now, the third advice I would like to give to you is you should avoid companies who have low stock vesting percentage in the first year or two. A great example for this would be Amazon. The vesting for the first year is 5%, I believe, and the second year is 15%, and 20% for every 6 months of year 3 and 4. It is likely that their workload is so high at Amazon and unsustainable that they likely would burn out engineers, and most engineers would quit in the first 1-2 years. That's why Amazon implements such vesting schedule. Companies like this usually hire just to fire most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. So they hire these people to fire so they look good on the earnings score. They hire people to show that they are growing and fire people to show that they are trying hard to maximize shareholders' value by lowering expenses and optimizing bottom line profits. To figure out whether the company has this type of stock vesting schedule, you can just ask the HR person in a video call or a phone call. You should not be emailing them, and take notes of their answers. The fourth advice I would like to give about identifying companies with bad work-life balance is to avoid companies with unusually high total compensation. Because the thing is, there is no such thing as too good to be true in the tech job market. One of the prime examples of this would be high-frequency trading firm. There is no free burgers. The more they pay you, the more they expect of you. If you want money like FU money or lots of money, start your own side hustles or taking on side contract gigs, open your own business. That's the way successful people build wealth. To figure out the company's unusually high total compensation, usually they will have this on their job posting because if they have high compensation, they would like to brag it. You can also re-clarify this with HR, especially if you are not living in the central tech hubs and the role is remote. For example, many of high-frequency trading companies actually hire roles across the United States remotely or hybrid settings, and they pay very high in like Chicago or New York, but they actually pay lower in lower cost of living areas. So you have to take into account the difference in cost of living for different areas. So some roles in high-frequency trading may have very high compensation, but that's for New York or Chicago or San Francisco. But if you say live in some other cities in the United States that have lower cost of living, so it's likely that their salary is not that unusually high. So you need to double check this. If they have very high total compensations for the same levels compared to similar levels, roles and locations at FANG, then that is a big red flag. Usually, if these companies have like 2x or 3x of FANG compensations for the same level, then that is a big no-no. Okay, the fifth advice I would like to give you to avoid job with bad work-life balance, and this is a little bit specific to software engineering, is to avoid jobs with on-call duty altogether. And the reason why you should avoid on-call duty altogether is because not all software development requires on-call. Usually the ones that require on-call just means the companies cheap out on paying their SRE or site reliability engineer. Or maybe the software organizations or the team or the leaders don't know how to structure their software teams very well. They can tell you that it's every 2 or 3 weeks, but don't believe those lies. You should be looking online and also on ex-employees' reviews of other platforms like Teamblind, Glassdoor, etc. for this information. I'll talk about this in later points. From my own experience, on-calls is not one-off. And usually if something is seriously broken, that would involve the entire team firefighting altogether, and that may include you. So maybe you're not inside the on-call, but if the team have to do on-call, you'll be called into fixing the on-call problems if there is anything happens, even if somebody else is doing the on-calls. Software teams that require on-calls are usually badly structured and have bad monitoring automation tools in place in general. To figure out whether the company has on-call duty, you can ask the interviewers if they are on your same team. For example, you can ask what the on-call rotation looks like for the team. Usually, they would happily answer this question for you. For most of my interviews, when there is on-call rotation expected, the interviewers usually bring the on-call conversation up and foremost in the interview process to see if the candidates are okay with them. If you're aiming for startups or smaller companies, on-call rotations are actually expected, but listen carefully to how often you have to do them. Usually at startups or smaller companies, on-calls are usually less of a burden than at bigger tech companies. I would say that once every 2 weeks and above is decent. Anything more frequent than once every 2 weeks should be avoided at all costs. Usually you should aim for, once every 4 to 8 weeks. That would be the ideal number. Okay, so my 6th advice to help you avoid companies with bad work-life balance is you should research them thoroughly on Glassdoor, Comparably, and Teamblind. What I mean by thoroughly is you should read every single negative review. These websites, especially Glassdoor, usually have more positive ratings in most metrics than reality. HR people of most companies are really good at spamming and lying on Glassdoor, Teamblind, and Comparably for hiring purposes. You need to pay attention to the negative reviews on these sites when it comes to your roles. Those could tell you a lot about the companies. If the company has bad ratings in any area on these websites, that means they likely will be even worse in that metric in reality. At Google and Meta, I believe engineering leaders' performance is also assessed on whether they burn out their engineers to hit targets. If engineering leaders are actually competent, their employees won't have to sacrifice work-life balance to hit target. Sacrificing work-life balance to hit targets is a sign of bad management or toxic management. You should look through Glassdoor, Comparably, and Teamblind. These would reveal a lot of details about PTO, vacation policy, stock vesting, etc. Almost everything that I mentioned above. But sometimes, this information can be outdated. Thus, it is still better for you to figure out these answers to the previous questions I mentioned through communication with HR or hiring team, through calling or speaking through the phone instead of emailing. Some questions you may be able to ask the interviewers directly, but for many others, work-life balance questions you may have to ask indirectly or consult HR or other resources. Please refer back to the previous sections for more information. Okay, so to recap the entire video, we have walked through the 6 advices to spot companies with bad work-life balance during the interview process. Please let me know down in the comments section below what your experience is like gauging companies' work-life balance policies and what you did to spot companies with bad work-life balance. And that will do it for me. Thank you for listening. See you in the next one. Bye bye.